On August 6, 1890, the electric chair was installed in Auburn Prison. William Kemmler was awakened at 5 o'clock in the morning. He quickly dressed, put on his suit and tie. After a hearty breakfast and prayers in the presence of a priest, the barber shaved William. At 6:38 in the morning, Kemmler entered the room where 17 witnesses had already gathered and said, "Gentlemen, I wish you all good luck. I believe I am going to a better place and am ready to go there." William sat on the chair, but was ordered to stand. They needed to cut a hole in his suit for the wire. Then he was tied to the chair and a metal cap was placed on his head. "Please do everything right," the condemned man said. "I'm not in a hurry." He was calm and did not protest. Perhaps he didn't believe that this unknown machine would bring him down so easily. When the guard turned on the current, Kemmler was hit with 1,000 volts. The current lasted 17 seconds. Then the current was turned off and neurologist Edward Spitzka pronounced the condemned man dead. "Hey, he's still breathing," the witnesses cried out. The neurologist ordered the current to be turned on again and it was increased to 2,000 volts. The scene resembled a horror movie. Blood from burst vessels flooded the floor. Smoke rose from the head. The smell of burning flesh filled the room. Kemmler groaned. Several people tried to leave to hide their nausea, but the door was locked. William Kemmler died only 8 minutes after the execution began. A reporter from the New York Times who was present at the execution wrote, "And you call this humanity? This is much worse than hanging." George Westinghouse, commenting on the events, said, "It would have been better to chop him with an axe." Everyone was sure this would not happen again. The electric chair was invented 115 years ago and became a symbol of the USA at that time. This invention, considered the most humane form of punishment, was created largely due to the mixing of various human motivations. The inventors were inclined to selfish goals, not so much seeking to alleviate the suffering of the condemned, but rather pursuing their own interests. The history of the new method of execution is full of intrigue and slander against rivals. This is vividly seen in the chronology of the confrontation between Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla. At the end of the 19th century, Edison actively promoted the use of direct current for electrification, while Tesla advocated for alternating current. Edison tried to discredit alternating current, claiming it was more dangerous to life. To prove his point, Edison organized public demonstrations where animals were executed using alternating current. This led to alternating current becoming associated with the electric chair. Despite Edison's efforts, ultimately, Tesla's alternating current prevailed, becoming the basis of the modern electrical system. But the history of the electric chair remains a grim reminder of the brutal rivalry between two great inventors. Albert Southwick, a dentist from Buffalo, New York, noticed the potential of electricity as an anesthetic in medicine after witnessing a case of death from touching an electric generator. From this incident arose the idea of using electricity for executions instead of hanging. Initially, Southwick discussed his idea with the head of the Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, Colonel Rockwell, suggesting using electricity for animal euthanasia. This idea was met with interest. In 1882, he began experiments on animals and published the results in scientific journals. Later, he presented his research to influential Senator David McMillan, arguing that execution using electricity could be more humane and quicker. McMillan, a proponent of the death penalty, saw this idea as an argument against its abolition, as such a method could not be accused of cruelty. He passed this idea to New York Governor David Bennett Hill. As a result, in 1886, a law was passed to establish a commission to study the most humane methods of carrying out the death sentence. The commission included Albert Southwick, Judge Matthew Hale, and politician Elbridge Gerry. In the conclusion of the 95-page report, it was noted that the most effective method of carrying out the death sentence was by using electricity. The report suggested replacing hanging with this new method of execution. Governor Hill signed the law on June 5, 1888, which was supposed to take effect on January 1, 1889, paving the way for a new, more humane form of punishment in the state of New York. The question remained open as to which type of current should be used in the apparatus for carrying out the death sentence, direct or alternating. On June 5, 1888, an article by Harold Brown was published in the New York Evening Post, warning of the dangers of alternating current. This letter caused a stir in society. Brown had previously worked for Edison in the 1870s, which suggests that the letter may have been commissioned. In 1888, Brown conducted a series of experiments on animals demonstrating the destructive effects of alternating current. 2 used alternating current generators were used in the experiments as Westinghouse refused to sell his. Tests were conducted on dozens of dogs, cats, and 2 horses. A presentation by the renowned scientist Thomas Edison before the commission tasked with choosing the method of execution made a strong impression. The legendary inventor convinced those present that death by electricity was painless and quick, especially when using alternating current. The commission had to choose between implementing lethal injection as an execution method. It is considered that lethal injection is more humane than the electric chair. In the 20th century, it became the standard method in most states where the death penalty is applied. Perhaps many would have avoided the torment of the electric chair if not for the competition between campaigns or Edison's compelling presentation before the commission. However, the main question was whether doctors should participate in the execution process, which for obvious reasons turned out to be impossible. Various execution methods were proposed, including applying current on a table or in a water bath. Harold Brown proposed using the electric chair to which electrodes were attached to the body of the condemned. Brown became the engineer-developer of the electric chair. During the struggle between Edison and Westinghouse, the Electric Execution Act was passed, which came into effect on January 1, 1889, establishing the use of electricity as the sole method of execution. By the beginning of 1889, the first electric chair was ready for use. This invention was revolutionary in improving methods of capital punishment. No one then anticipated that this invention would mark the beginning of an era of struggle for those sentenced to death. In 1896, Ohio allowed the use of the electric chair, followed by Massachusetts in 1898, New Jersey in 1906, and North Carolina in 1910. The electric chair became the most popular method of execution in the USA. Over 100 years, 4,300 people, including serial killers and gangsters, were executed through it. Currently, the electric chair remains a method of execution in 8 states, but only if the condemned chooses it. The last person executed through the electric chair was Robert Gleason, executed on January 16, 2013 in the state of Virginia. So what does a person feel when they are executed in the electric chair? The process of execution by electric current is quite simple. You will be strapped to a wooden chair with a rigid back by leather straps on your wrists, ankles, forearms, chest, and waist. Electrodes will be attached to the crown of your head and to one or both calves. Contacts will be covered with sponges soaked in a saturated salt solution to conduct electricity into the body. Upon the command of the executioner, the switch is flipped, delivering a deadly shock of current. Most electric chairs deliver somewhere between 5–13 amperes of alternating current at voltages ranging from 1700 to 2500 volts. When voltage is applied, a massive electric current flows through the body. The human brain operates with very small currents flowing from one neuron to another. The applied electric current strongly suppresses them, causing instant loss of consciousness and brain destruction. The brain has trillions of connections called synapses. They are all instantly destroyed as if billions of fuses were burning out simultaneously. Damage occurs much faster than the nervous system can register pain or physical sensations. There are no pain receptors in the brain, so the victim feels nothing. For them, everything simply stops in microseconds. According to accounts from electricians who suffered accidental electric shocks but survived, loss of consciousness upon contact with a high-voltage source was instantaneous. So if you were to die on a well-designed and properly maintained electric chair, it should be like losing consciousness. But sometimes everything can go completely differently. And then the worst begins. If the execution is done incorrectly and with faulty equipment, the nightmare only intensifies. The electric chair would likely be a horrific death if loss of consciousness were not instantaneous. The sensation of a failed execution by electric shock must be like a massive jagged shard piercing through your entire body, followed by a sensation of fire after a few seconds. If the sponges are absent or improperly soaked in saline solution, both they and the skin underneath may ignite. The horrifying sight of an electric arc may occur between the electrodes and the body of the condemned, as was the case with the executions of John L. Evans and Joseph Tafero in Alabama and Florida, respectively. Often, electric shocks can leave the body maimed and in a vegetative state. Meanwhile, the heart still beats and the condemned continues to breathe, leaving the prison staff with no choice but to continue delivering shocks until death occurs. Likely, it was scenarios like these that prompted governments to abolish this form of execution in most states. But it's important to understand that, in the fervor of sympathy for criminals dying as a result of execution, we must not forget about the victims, many of whom were killed in much more cruel and heinous ways.